If the GSEC rate is going to go up because I'm gone beyond my borrowing calendar, it's going to affect everybody's borrowing. And at a time when India is looking for more money to invest, more money to borrow and do business, can we afford that? But it's not going to be that much severe. The impact is not going to be all that much as it would be when the center borrows if the states were to borrow.
Well, that was the position on the 12th of October. After maintaining that states should borrow to bridge the GST compensation shortfall, the centre has finally relented. The Finance Ministry has said the centre will be borrowing the 1.1 lakh crore rupees on behalf of states and will pass it on as back-to-back loans. The centre has said borrowing would not impact the fiscal math as it will be reflected as part of capital receipts on the state government's books. That's not all. The centre has also revised its second half borrowing calendar to accommodate the special window. The amount will be raised through two equal tranches of 55,000 crore rupees under the 3-year and 5-year tenors. The centre's U-turn comes just 4 days after Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman told the media that states must borrow and the centre will only facilitate the borrowing. The compensation issue has been a major bone of contention between the centre and most opposition-run states who were opposed to borrow themselves. Now, with the centre relenting, do we have a truce at the GST Council? We will discuss that and more with the Finance Ministers of Kerala and Delhi. But before that, let's listen in to what Goa and Chattisgarh had to say on the centre's change in position.
I would say the decision arrived at by the Honorable Finance Minister is one of the most practical decisions arrived at, and it shows in a federal structure that they are very much alive to the demands of the state or the problems faced by the states as well financially. And I think it also shows the sensitivity of the fact that states need to be protected from adverse consequences of higher borrowing.
The confusion is that they mentioned 292.1. 292.1 says that the state governments are entitled to take a loan against their security of the consolidated fund of that state. And now the centre has put the clause which you mentioned, I think, earlier, that the GST, the states have been asked to give an undertaking that the government of India can service the interest and the principal amount from the GST compensation cess that would be collected, continue to be collected beyond 2022. So what exactly does this mean?
Well, reactions coming in there from the states of Chattisgarh and Goa. Joining me now to take this discussion forward on the program, Manish Sisodia, the Deputy Chief Minister of Delhi, also in charge of the finance portfolio and a member of the GST Council, and Thomas Isaac, the Finance Minister of Kerala, here with us. Gentlemen, many thanks for joining us. Mr. Isaac, you had said that the Kerala government was actively considering legal remedies. In fact, there was supposed to be a meeting with the Chief Minister and a decision was supposed to have taken place today on whether you would move the court. Fortunately, the centre has had a change of heart, has shown a change in its position. So is that now completely off the table? Legal recourse, is that off the table?
Yeah, there were two issues which were being debated. One was who should borrow. Second was how much to borrow. Regarding who should borrow, now the central government will borrow and pass it on to states. And then it will be reflected in the fiscal deficit of the states, not of the center, because it's a back-to-back loan transfer that takes place. That's fine. I think that's a mode which is acceptable. Our Chief Minister has also written to the Union Finance Minister welcoming it. But then there is a second issue. The gap this year is 2.3 lakh crores, of which hopefully 60,000 crores would come from the compensation cess collection during the current year. That leaves a gap of 1.7 lakh crores, of which 1.1 lakh crores will be borrowed today and now. The rest of it, some 60,000 crores would have to wait till 2023. This is the nutshell option one. Now, having come this far, let us discuss this point, this 60 lakh crore rupees. Can some more additional funds be made available to states during the current year? If it has to be postponed, deferred to 2023, a formal decision of the council is also required. Council decision is required for extension of the compensation cess collection as well as deferment of compensation cess payment beyond 5 years. That's very clear from AG's name. So my plea is, since it's not going to be reflected in the central government's fiscal deficit, why don't you borrow this entire amount, 1.7 lakh crores rupees, and make it available to states? That is perfect. If not, then let us discuss how much can be borrowed. So I think it should be possible to reach it. And therefore, we are not... now,
so your hope...
Yeah.
Yes, so you're not looking at legal remedy anymore?
Well, we are going through the meeting. Meeting has been called tomorrow. So we'll be discussing that. But I think that our Chief Minister has already written to Finance Minister that there is one issue like this remaining, and it should be discussed and come to an amicable settlement.
Mr. Isaac, I just wanted a clarification. You said a meeting has been called tomorrow. Is this a meeting of the GST Council, or individual states will meet with the Finance Ministry and Finance Ministry officials?
Yeah, it's an internal meeting in Kerala government to discuss this whole issue called by CM. That is not postponed. But CM has already written to FM saying that there is one issue like this remaining, which hopefully would be discussed and resolved, so that GST Council...
Yes, so what happens with the balance, that is the outstanding issue that you would want clarity from the centre. Mr. Sisodia, has your Chief Minister written to the Finance Minister accepting the proposal that was sent to all states and union territories at 5 p.m. yesterday with the change as far as the borrowing plan is concerned? What is Delhi's position now?
दिल्ली की पोजीशन भी इसमें बड़ी क्लियर है, बिकॉज सिंस डे वन वी हैव बीन सेइंग कि कंपनसेशन ना देना या कंपनसेशन से मुकरना कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन के खिलाफ जाएगा, और सारे प्रोमिसेस जो स्टेट और सेंटर का जो रिलेशनशिप है उसके बीच जो ट्रस्ट है उसके खिलाफ जाएगा, क्योंकि आप पहले कुछ कमिट करते हैं, राइटिंग में कमिट करते हैं और उसके बाद में उससे बैक ट्रैक करते हैं. कल जिस तरह का स्टैंड सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट ने लिया है, ये पहले लिया जाना चाहिए था. इतने लंबे डिस्कशंस, इतने सारे उसके सारे स्टेट्स यही मांग रहे थे कि भाई आप बोरो करो. हम समझते हैं कि आपके पास पैसा नहीं है, हम ये ज़बरदस्ती नहीं कह रहे हैं कि आप CFI से निकाल के या कहीं अपने फंड काट के आप इसमें डाल दीजिए पैसा. हम सब मानते हैं कि स्टेट्स के पास पैसा नहीं है, सेंटर के पास पैसा नहीं है. एज मिस्टर आइजैक सेड, हु विल बोरो वाज द क्वेश्चन. दैट वाज द ओनली डिस्कशन दैट टुक प्लेस सो मेनी डेज. अगर सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट पहले तैयार हो जाती कि हम बोरो कर लेंगे, जो डिसीजन उन्होंने कर लिया, फिर शायद इतनी कंट्रोवर्सीज होती ही नहीं. So those controversies are over. Now central government is borrowing. That's a good thing. Like Mr. Isaac said, ki now the question is, what about the rest of the money? Because in case of Delhi is going to suffer a setback of 16,000 because of implementation of GST this year. Now under this option, we are just getting approximately 5,800, approximately 6,000 crore rupees. सो हमें 10,000 करोड़ रुपए कम मिल रहे हैं. यही बात चीफ मिनिस्टर साहब ने भी कही है फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर को. हमने भी फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट के समक्ष उठाई है कि साहब ये 10,000, दिल्ली तो छोटा राज्य है, दिल्ली का बजट, दिल्ली के रिसोर्सेज उस तरह से नहीं होते हैं. हम लोग लोन भी नहीं ले सकते हैं. जो आपने राज्यों को पैसा दिया है लोन के रूप में या कोविड रिलीफ के रूप में, वो भी स्टेट्स को, दिल्ली को नहीं दिया गया है. वैसे में ये 10,000 करोड़ का सेटबैक नहीं है हमारे लिए, तो ये बहुत बड़ा सेटबैक है. इसको आप कवर करिए किसी तरह से. और आई होप कि अगर वो बातचीत से रास्ता निकाल रहे हैं तो आई एम श्योर बातचीत से इसका भी रास्ता निकालेंगे.
So Delhi putting on the table its demand for the 10,000 crore rupees, which will continue to be an outstanding part of the shortfall, and seeking claims of that. But Mr. Isaac, on the issue of the loan, and the government has also made it very clear now that 0.5% additional borrowing that states have been given the provision to go in for will not be linked to any conditionalities any longer. So is that, if the talks don't proceed and there is no breakthrough on the second issue that you've raised when it comes to the balance dues, will that then be the viable option that states will have to look at?
No, that cannot be the viable option, because this 2% additional borrowing was permitted much before all these controversies really broke out. And in fact, 2 sessions back, the GST Council, Mr. Sushil Kumar Modi, formally requested that it will be very difficult to meet the conditions for many states, and therefore additional 0.5% must be also additional, may be made unconditional, so that 1% of this additional borrowing is made unconditional. So this is something very independent, which has nothing to do with compensation. Definitely, it's very welcome that additional 0.5% has been made unconditional. It must be made available to all states while we discuss and come to an understanding. I'm certain we will be able to come to an understanding regarding GST compensation. But these two needn't be linked at all. They are two independent matters.
Okay. All right, so at least there's a change of mood here. Mr. Isaac now feeling confident that there will be a breakthrough even on the other outstanding issues. But Mr. Sisodia, GST Council, the last 2 meetings have been consumed with this one issue. No other decisions were taken, no other matter was taken up. We're approaching the festive season, and there was a lot of expectation that the GST Council would perhaps review some rates. Now, are we heading in that direction at all? Do you believe that this is the right time for the GST Council to consider cutting rates for categories like two-wheelers, etc.? I know that there is no formal proposal that the Fitment Committee has put to the Council yet, but do you think that we're moving in that direction?
Please, if they want to come up with some proposal, they need to have some study on their hand, because coming up to काउंसिल, बिकॉज वैट रिजीम में भी जब टैक्स नीचे किए जाते थे या ऊपर किए जाते थे तो बहुत सारे कॉम्बिनेशंस को देखकर डिसीजन लिया जाता था. तो इट कांट बी जस्ट कि राइट नाउ व्हाट आई थिंक, इट्स लाइक मैटर ऑफ स्टडी कि आज देश की इकोनॉमी में किसी टैक्स को कट करने से या किसी को रेज करने से क्या फ़र्क पड़ेगा. अनलेस वी डू फॉर्मल साइंटिफिक स्टडी, इट्स हार्ड टू से एनीथिंग. राइट नाउ वेयर वी स्टैंड इज गवर्नमेंट्स के पास पैसे नहीं हैं, लोगों के पास पैसे नहीं है, लोगों के जॉब्स जा रहे हैं. उस सारी स्थिति में टैक्स कम करने से होगा या लोगों के पास किसी भी तरह से टैक्स, मतलब सरकार की योजनाओं से और अदरवाइज भी लोगों के पास छोटा पैसा और पहुंचे उनकी पॉकेट्स में, सो दैट दे इन्वेस्ट दिस मनी इनटू मार्केट्स, इनटू बाइंग, उस सब से होगा. तो लॉट ऑफ थिंग्स आर नीडेड. इफ जीएसटी काउंसिल कम्स विद सम प्रपोजल, वी विल डेफिनेटली लाइक टू कंसीडर दैट.
Mr. Isaac, do you believe that there is any room at this point in time for a rate revision, a lower rate, across different categories to try and spur demand, boost demand?
See, what is the issue that we are discussing now? The issue is that even before the COVID, it is clear that is going to be a big gap in the GST revenue, which have to be compensated. And why did it appear? Reason was the revenue was on point, and there are 2 reasons for it. Even before COVID, economic activities were coming down. Secondly, GST rates were slashed down. Even initially when we adopted GST, the GST rates were much below the combined pre-GST rates of sale tax, excise tax, service tax, and octroi, and all this together. In fact, that's how we determine the rate. the table just presented, this is the existing pre-GST rate of excise and sales tax, etc. And therefore, we always chose the lower level. So then you slashed it down. And rates to me are not revenue. The rate reduce is very simple. Then raise the rate from that reduced level is very difficult. And therefore, we must be very carefully thought out. Fit-in committee has to go in and see what is the loss of revenue and so on. It cannot be taken on the moment.
So no proposal. Yes, and no proposal so far has been put forward by the Fitment Committee to the GST Council. Gentlemen, I want to now address one of the crucial issues which perhaps is a lesson from what has happened in the last few meetings of the GST Council. The need for a dispute resolution mechanism to be put in place. Mr. Sisodia, the fact of the matter is that the law says that the GST Council shall put in place a dispute resolution mechanism. Now, what we've seen as far as the compensation shortfall issue is concerned, centre and states up in arms, some states deciding then to go along with the centre. The Assam Finance Minister saying that there are now 2 blocks within the GST Council. If this should arise again, hopefully it won't, but if this situation arises again, there needs to be, in clarity, black and white, a dispute resolution mechanism in place. Is that something that people like you are now going to seek clarification on?
Are you asking me?
Yes, sir.
I think it's a legal need and it's a legal provision also that there should be a dispute resolution procedure and mechanism and body. So law talks about this, and we have been demanding in the council. We have put this on the table many times that now is the time, especially in this compensation dispute. Everybody was asking, many of the states were asking for this, especially Punjab Minister raised this very loudly that we should have, this is the high time right now, we should have this dispute resolution mechanism in functional. But somehow central government is trying to avoid this. I don't know for what reasons best known to them, but they are trying to avoid it. I don't know why, but because it should be, and if there is some mechanism like this, I think we can save a lot of time from the council when all the ministers are just arguing on the issues which can be addressed by the dispute mechanism.
Mr. Isaac, is this going to now be something that you believe the council needs to take up on priority?
No, I do not want to postmortem what all transpired in the last 2 meetings because I think we have got to get over it. But look, there was serious difference of opinion. Everybody knows it. You are discussing that. So then how do we proceed? Decisions have to be made in the council. That you want to defer the payment of GST compensation for a particular, beyond 5 years. Make the decision. Once the decision is made, it's binding upon me and Manish, any state, every state. But then there would be a dispute. I still don't agree with it. The law says you can have a dispute resolution mechanism. Let it be debated there. Let it be examined in place and a decision be made. Meanwhile, the council can constructively pursue its tasks. Now what happens? In the name of consensus, when there is very clear evidence, you don't take a decision, the council, and then you go out and make a press conference where you declare things which have not been concluded in the council. Now, all this creates unnecessary bitterness and distance and so on. So in this context, I would say, let the democratic process go through. There is nothing wrong having, suppose people have a different opinion, having stating we have difference of opinion, and have some mechanisms instituted to settle this. So this does not undermine the consensus and cooperation between state and center or between states. So I think I would welcome a dispute mechanism.
Yes, that seems to be the thinking on part of many states. But gentlemen, I want to end by asking you about the preparedness for the festive season in light of the COVID pandemic. Mr. Sisodia, I'll start by asking you, there has been an advisory given to the Delhi government that there is a likelihood of cases spiking when we are in the midst of the festive season. Delhi continues to track about 4,000 odd cases every day. How geared up are you to be able to deal with any increase in numbers, any large increase in numbers?
I think Delhi is well prepared to deal with such situation if that arises, because what we need is, we have understood in two phases, we have understood that ultimately what we need is our hospitals should be geared up, our ICUs especially should be ready, and there should be adequate number of ICUs that we have. In most of the time our ICUs have been vacant, maybe half of the ICUs are vacant, more than half of the beds are vacant in our hospitals. So I think Delhi is ready, but for God's sake, if this situation does not arise, that's a best of the best situation. But yes, we are ready.
Yes, so you believe that you are prepared for a possible spike, and yes, we do hope that that doesn't happen. Mr. Isaac, we've seen a spike in cases for Kerala. In fact, you're tracking more than the national average today, sir. How concerned are you, and how prepared are you for a further onslaught?
Very concerned. Obviously, this kind of air of permissiveness created by various factors, which has led to, say, relaxation, undermining of COVID protocols. And that's the reason for the spike. Now that raises certain challenges. Even now we have the advantage that the case fatality rate is 0.3, the lowest in the country. We want to keep it that way, which means a very rapid expansion of the hospital facilities and so on, which requires much greater expenditure, which requires hiring of large number of temporary health personnel. So that's what we are doing. And lack of resources is indeed a problem. But we are giving the highest priority to health, and the settlement of this compensation issue would come very handy to have additional money. So that's what we are trying to do. One, boost our health preparedness so that we are able to maintain this very low case fatality. That's what we are doing. At the same time, appealing to the people.
Right.
Because there is agitations and so on in Kerala that has created all this this peculiar situation. I think everybody realizes we are playing with the fire, because there is an election coming up in Kerala, and in times people have competitive politics and so on, one-upmanship, and it's understandable. It's very dangerous this time, and I think everybody is now realizing it, because cases going beyond 10,000. I feel very jealous of Delhi. They have brought it down to 4,000. No, in fact, when the curve was rising in Delhi, we were feeling so comfortable. But now, we know, things have become slightly bad.
Yeah.
But this solution to the compensation issue will give us resources to boost our health preparedness.
Right. Yes, resources will come in handy as states gear up to deal with the rise in cases, and Kerala is in the midst of that problem today. Manish Sisodia, Thomas Isaac, many thanks for joining us here to discuss the GST breakthrough and the pending issues that you would want the Finance Ministry to address. Hopefully, there can be a resolution on each of them. Thanks very much for your time. We'll take a break. There's a lot more coming up. Don't go anywhere. We're back in a moment.